Today we welcome Todd Touchberry to Flivver Channel Talks. Todd is a father from Sumter, South Carolina, who is planning a cross-country journey in his Ford Model T. Todd plans to set out on this adventure in November to raise money for hydrocephalus research, which is a condition that his daughter suffers from. Todd is busy these days running a restaurant and being a husband and father, yet somehow he finds time to prepare his Model T and trailer for the adventure and to promote the trip and raise funds for the charity. I'm full of questions for Todd about hydrocephalus, about his plans and preparations for a cross-country journey in a 100-year-old car, and about his experiences as a Model T owner. Todd, welcome to Flivver Channel Talks.
Well, thanks for having me.
I've got so many things I'd like to ask you, but why don't we start with the car? Do you have a long history with Model Ts?
I don't really. Only in it about 16 or 18 months now. Really still new to them. I've always had older stuff, from the 50s, 60s, 70s, mostly things that had a small block Chevrolet in it. So this was totally new for us.
What got you started?
On my bucket list of things to own was a 100-year-old car. And when I started researching prices of cars that were over 100 years old, the Model Ts just seemed to be a little bit more budget friendly.
That's the truth. Yep, definitely. Although they still find a way to suck dollars out of your wallet.
Non-stop.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, so was it surprising owning and working on your first 100-year-old car?
I learned to drive on my great uncle's. He was kind of like my granddaddy. Tractor. He had a Ford tractor, so I was used to the gas being up here, and the brake and everything. And I have a history of dirt track racing, so I drive with 2 feet anyway. So it wasn't that hard to become accustomed to it. Jumping out of a modern vehicle and jumping back in that, and then jumping back in a modern vehicle. It takes a second to get acclimated. Yeah. But as far as working on it, obviously still learning. Some of the internal stuff. First time I greased it or changed the oil in it when we first got the first one, I was like, man, I've got to be the YouTube mechanic for a minute, and look how to do things. And it's simple, it's just it's a little bit different thinking, a little bit more primitive than what I was used to, but it's so complex but yet so simple, so it's really interesting.
It is neat. I really like the ignition system. The wooden individual coils, one for each plug, and the simple timer just with a mechanical lever to set the timing. It's really compellingly simple yet remarkably effective for its day.
I love showing people the coil boxes, made out of wood. It kind of blows them away.
They're perfect at the car shows to be able to pop those out and show people. People get really excited and amazed. Yeah. Well, tell me, how did you come by your T?
I found it online on an online sale, and we went from South Carolina. We left on a Saturday morning, and I think it was Saturday midday, and drove through all afternoon, through the night, through the snow all the way up to Connecticut, picked it up on a Monday morning, and drove straight back through the snow. Quite the expedition, I guess you could say. But we had a good time on that trip as well. We stopped at Gettysburg and some other, places on the way, and for a few minutes. But we got back home, and I was so tired. It took 2 or 3 days before we even unloaded it out the trailer. It was quite the trip.
Yeah, indeed. Now, do you only have one T, or are you like many owners that seem to multiply?
I was like, no, we'll be good with one. And, a few months later, we had our second one. we got a truck to start with up in Connecticut. And then I think it was last May or June, we went to Florida and picked up a touring car.
Oh, wow. And which one do you plan to take across the country?
The truck will be the one that you see, but I will probably take both, for make sure I have spare parts. But I think I'm gonna take the body off the touring car. I had several people say that was overkill, but I don't know. I'd rather make
Well,
sure I have
I
it working.
I find whatever you prepare for won't happen. So if you're prepared
Exactly.
for that, you'll be just fine.
Yeah, so we'll have an extra engine, transmission, and rear end with us, front axle, everything. So,
Your
say again?
trailer's big enough. Your trailer's big enough for two of them.
Yeah, I think we can fit them in there. I may be in denial about this, but I bought a 24-foot trailer.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, a year ago today, it came up on my Facebook memories. We went to Georgia and picked that up, and I'm pretty sure we'll be able to finagle both of them in there. Even if I have to turn one sideways or whatever the case may
Mm-hmm.
be.
Oh, good, neat. And is that trailer going with you on the trip? Have you got a
Yeah,
following
my
vehicle or?
wife, our both of our friend Jasmine, Charlie Fawcett. He's a realtor here in town, and he sponsored just about every car show that I've hosted at the restaurant that I run.
Okay.
And another buddy, Philip Gibler, he's a retired Air Force guy, and he's an all around car guy. So they're going with us, and they'll take care of any maintenance or changing flat tires, whether it be on the Model T truck or trailer or what have you. And the
Mm-hmm.
plan is for my wife and Jasmine to fly back to South Carolina, and then three guys will drive back.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you're putting together a good team to go with you on this adventure. So tell me more about the adventure that you've got planned. What's your what's your route, and when do you hope to go?
The We're going to actually start in South Carolina. I originally planned on starting in Georgia near Savannah, and because the old Highway 80 from back in the teens and 20s, I don't remember what year it was put together. It ran coast to coast from Savannah, Georgia to San Diego, California, nonstop till 1964, I think it was. And then west of Dallas, it's pretty much decommissioned. And so we're going to go, since we visit Georgia a lot anyway on our little small vacations and adventures we do, we're not going to get on 80 initially, but we're going to leave Hunting Island State Park in South Carolina since that's our hometown or home state. And we had a representative actually donated a flag, an American flag and South Carolina state flag off of the Capitol building over in Columbia, South Carolina. So we're also going to be displaying that.
Nice.
So again, I felt like we should start in South Carolina. So we'll drop back
Mm-hmm.
down into Georgia, go around Savannah to Claxton, Georgia, which is the fruitcake capital of the world, Vidalia, Georgia, which is popular for the Vidalia onions, and over to Andersonville, um, Georgia. Is a state and national historic site for Civil War battle, or I'm sorry, POW camp. Then we'll jump back up the next day to Columbus, Georgia, and get on 80, what's left of it, and carry it all the way through Shreveport, all the way to Dallas. And then
Mm-hmm.
from there, I'm not 100% on the route yet, but I plan to go to Hobbs, New Mexico after we leave Fort Worth, and drop back down to the Carlsbad Caverns, and then Guadalupe Mountains, and maybe over to Tombstone, Arizona.
Oh, amazing. And do you think you can avoid the interstates?
Most of it, yeah. There's a few places that I know we'll have to get on interstates to get from one, what we have here, state roads, kind of back roads,
Mm-hmm.
from one state road to the next that are slower speed limits, two lanes, and going through different small towns and such. But we'll have to get on a few of them. But
Mm.
absolute worst case scenario is we put it in the trailer if it gets to be an unsafe situation.
Yeah, that's good to have that option.
Yeah,
That's a
that's not the
great
plan,
thing.
but we do have it just in case.
Hmm. And are you planning to take it slowly and do lots of stops and visits, or is this a speed run of some kind?
I would
I
really
say
like to
that.
make it. As I said in my YouTube video when we announced the trip, and I said it at the Model T meeting out in Las Vegas a few weeks ago, I grew up watching Convoy, Smokey and the Bandit, Cannonball Run. So and I love racing, so I've kind of got that mentality that let's get through this as fast as we can. But I did have to promise my wife, we would do a little bit of sightseeing on the side.
Hmm. Yeah, and as fast as you can is that's a good way to put it because you can't be going too fast in a Model
Yeah.
T.
I was inspired also. In fact, I've got the book up under my computer if it doesn't upset the camera too much. Tom Cotter, if you haven't read this book,
Oh, okay. Yep, I haven't. Interesting.
there's a link on our YouTube channel for our announcement when I said it's only 3,000 miles in the little thumbnail. They did it in like 14 and a half days in 2016 or 17, I think it was. And so we're going to try to do it in 12 and a half just because that's my mentality, you know.
Wow, that's gonna be long days. All right,
Yeah,
and only in daylight, I presume.
yeah, I'm sure we'll end up a little bit at night, but like I said, I'm gonna leave as absolutely as early as I possibly can in the morning. The
Hmm.
first 2 or 3 days, and I've got everything just about down to the minute for the first 3 or 4 days. But the first 2 or 3 days, we'll probably be looking at 9.5 to 10 hours of seat time each day. You know.
Right. And have you got scheduled maintenance stops, or are you expecting
Yeah.
your teammates to do that in the overnights, like a
They're
24-hour
gonna
race or
every
something?
time we stop for gas or bathroom breaks or whatever, which those are almost scheduled. Um, but of course, the truck and trailer, and whoever's there, whether my wife or each person will take turns riding with me, at different points. But
Hmm.
I'll be the only solo driver,
Okay.
so that's a little bit more, of a unique thing, I think. Um,
Hmm.
each time we stop for bathroom or lunch or what have you, we'll try to do some maintenance on it. Check the oil before we take it back off. Do the greasing and stuff like that if it needs it.
Great.
But those guys, Philip and Charlie, will be doing most of that. I have a
Yeah,
feeling I'll be kind of tired.
you'll be pretty tired. You'll need to take
Yeah,
rest breaks whenever
yeah,
you can. Yeah. Yeah, but you'll get to see the country because at the pace of a Model T, you can really enjoy the scenery and the natural areas that you're passing through. I find anyway.
I got on. I found a website called RoadsideAmerica.com, I think it was, and they've got little pins dropped across the map, and you can find some really interesting things. So, like I said, once we get to through Alabama, because we visit Georgia and Alabama a good bit, there's a few things that we definitely want to stop and see. Just for
Great.
some again roadside attractions. When I was a kid,
Hmm.
I got the tail end of stuff that was in the southeast, specifically Cherokee, North Carolina, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Maggie Valley,
Hmm.
North Carolina, and there were a lot of roadside attractions, so to speak, along
Hmm.
that route. And so there's still a few things out there that I definitely want to see. It'd be a great time to stop and stretch your legs at least for a few minutes anyway.
Hmm. I expect the Model T community along your route's going to be pretty energized to hear when you're coming through and that sort of thing.
Yeah, Ron Custer was in charge of the Model T Club of America national meeting 2 or 3 weeks ago in Las Vegas, and he invited me to come out and speak. And we met a lot of cool people, and some of them offered to do whatever they could do, whether it was a route or if they're within 100 miles of us, and so if we need
Hmm.
anything, so that was great, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get as much support as you need. Fantastic. So, how many hours a day, Dan, do you think you'll be driving?
I think the first few days, first 2 or 3 days, will be 9.5, maybe 10 hours, if need be.
Hmm.
Because another thing is, we can't just drive until we get tired or till I get tired and find a
Hmm.
motel. I've got to have each stop booked out well in advance. And if I say
Hmm.
we're stopping in this town, that's where we have accommodations for that night. So we have to make it there. Whether it's 5 or 6 in the afternoon or if it's 11:30 at night. We've got to get there.
Yeah. So, mostly hotels along the way, or are you doing some camping too?
We're going to do some camping as well. Again, depending on what I did is I drew out a straight line, on a map, east to west, and said, okay, let's just, depending on the terrain as well, okay, if I can go 200 miles in this rougher terrain, where there's some elevation changes, or if it's flat like West Texas, maybe we can do
Hmm.
300 miles that day, just for sake of figuring.
Hmm.
And I drew a circle, around between 250 and 300. And where are there accommodations at? Is there an Airbnb? Is
Right.
there a state park or KOA campground or whatever, and that's kind of the determining factor. So some of the stops will be at state parks, local campgrounds, a KOA, and every fourth night I'm gonna try to do an Airbnb. That way we can get
Hmm.
a easier shower, rather than
Hmm.
the cramped showers like at state parks and such,
Yeah.
and be able
Yeah.
to stretch out just a little bit more.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like an amazing trip.
My wife said one and done, with this trip.
Oh, that's good. You're not just doing this journey for your own adventure and entertainment. You've got a more altruistic motive. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, my now 22-year-old daughter was born with hydrocephalus, which is a normal amount of cerebral spinal fluid on your brain. Like ours right now is circulating and through our ventricles, kind of like a radiator hose and, a radiator and water pump, more or less. That's the way to car guys, that's the only way I know how to, explain what it is. So anyway, her
Mm-hmm.
ventricles were constricted like a radiator hose would collapse. Her ventricles were constricted, so the spinal fluid couldn't go through, at the right pace. And so it did a lot of damage to her brain before she was born. She's missing 2/3 of her midline. She shouldn't be able to, know left and right. Or the back of her brain actually just bluntly looks like Swiss cheese, when you look at it on a scan. And but anyway, she luckily, fortunately, she had a little bit of flow through those ventricles, where some people have none, and it's a lot more of a dire condition. But she had a shunt placed in her brain, which is almost like a straw, and it goes down. It went from here, you could feel it under her skin, down. She's had it to her heart, spine, and stomach, over the years. And anyway, it just drains the excess fluid off of her brain.
Right.
So once she got old enough to realize, she knows no different either. So once she got old enough, she started doing some fundraisers, and they do a walk. Got my shirt on today, and she started doing a fundraiser for that. And she asked me for years to help her with her fundraiser. She's like, "Daddy, do a car show, or whatever to help me out, And again, I want to be clear: this money is not for her personally. This is for Hydrocephalus Association. Anything we
Excellent.
raise. And I told her, I was like, I put her off, and I was like, I'm gonna come up with something bigger than just an average car show, So once we got the first Model T, and I started researching people with the Model Ts and people that went coast to coast, and it was 60 something days, and it was 40 something days, and they kept getting it shorter and shorter. I was like, man, that would be really cool to do in an old car, but I don't know about a Model T. Then we went to the Henry Ford Museum and started researching some more, and the more I got into it, and I was like, man, this might be possible. Maybe this is, for lack of a better way to put it, a gimmick, to raise awareness for hydrocephalus. And I told her about it, and she was quite amazed and all. But she's been very passionate. She usually raises about $2,000 a year, and so I was like, man,
Good for
let's
her.
really blow it out the water, for and try to raise a substantial amount of money. And when we were doing the video for the announcement, $10 just popped in my mind per mile, and I was like, man, okay, we got to raise $10 per mile. So we're trying to raise $30,000, and a lot of people have donated. I think we're at 21 different states have made donations now for the little
Wow.
decals that we're trying to mail out. And
Sure.
so it's pretty cool. It's reached a lot of people. I mean, obviously, it's went across the border now, to you. Some guys in Australia made a comment, one time a few weeks ago. So it's international now, I guess.
Well, the Model T community is international and it's very generous, so I'm sure um, as you get closer and closer to your departure, you'll get even more support. It's fantastic.
So it's very challenging too. Like I said, booking out each stop. Okay, are there even gas stations? Anywhere
Hmm.
close? So I've had to get on Google Maps, and I've talked to someone in every single state that we'll go through, and they're whether it's just a random chamber of commerce or the welcome center, and everyone has been very accommodating so far. When I explain to them, this is why we may be coming through your town or your state or whatever, and
Hmm.
very accommodating.
Are you doing your own navigation then? Because you're the lead car, right?
Yeah. Like I said, I've got just about the first couple of days anyway, just about down to the minute. Like, okay, we should arrive at Port Royal, South Carolina. Yeah, Port Royal, which is the front porch of Savannah. I think it's what they call it, Georgia. We should arrive there at such and such time. We should arrive at Claxton, Georgia at, I don't remember off the top of my head, 9:45 a.m. And I tried to build in 10 to 20 minutes for each stop, you know, whether it's just for bathroom or gas or whatever, or if there's a little bit of sightseeing or the maintenance, So at the last stop of the day, I think I built in 30 minutes or 45 minutes and arrive at our campground that night at 6:30 or 6:40 or something like that. I can't remember, but I tried to allow, because I've got to have some kind of a schedule, to go by, or we'll just get behind, like, hey,
Hmm.
look at this, squirrel, and get lost on the time.
Yeah, well, that's the racer mentality, right? You're
Yeah.
always thinking how to keep moving, how to get to the next milestone. It's good. That's going to be an amazing journey. So, what kinds of things have you had to do on the T to prepare it, and what do you still have on your to-do list?
So far we have the engine and transmission out of the touring car, and it's kind of getting a light refreshment, I guess you could say. And we're going to go through the two rear ends, just to make sure they have the modern thrust washers in them, because I've never taken these two apart, and I have another one taken apart and getting some help on that one, and have a radiator on order. Of course, that's another thing that takes forever, and really just making sure both cars are as prepped as they possibly can. That way, I know I have at least one spare part,
Hmm.
and I'll have 8 wheels with me. I'll have
That's good.
almost as many as you have in the background.
Yeah, yeah. I've got Model T and Model A wheels piled up everywhere here right now. Now, are you running wooden wheels or wire?
I still run the wooden wheels, and I wanted to switch to wire, but just there's the simple cost of it, and I was like, man, I've got 8, two
Hmm.
front, 4 fronts, 4 rears,
Hmm.
should be good to go.
Are they in good condition? Spokes are tight. And...
Spokes are good and tight. They'll be good and tight until probably day 2. That would be my luck, but we'll just hope we'll just run through some water or something other and see if they really actually tighten up.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing too. I never driven my Model T in the rain until about a month ago, and we had a rainy day, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna just go out here and drive around the neighborhood in the rain. And as soon as I pulled it out, it quit raining. So I waited a few minutes and actually drove it, and that's another thing too. The news people have come over here, and the little wiper,
Hmm.
they get a big laugh out of that, and they're like, "Are you
Everybody
serious?" I
gets
was
a
like, yeah. I was like, yeah,
everybody
I'm
gets a
serious about
kick
that.
out of
That's
that.
what it is.
Yeah, there's so many things about the T that are just so intriguing to people these days because it's just so different. So sort of primitive, but also ingenious. Yeah.
The news reporter from the local TV channel, the last one that was over here, he was 23, 24, I think. And I was like, "What is the oldest thing you've ever ridden in?" I rode in my grandpa's old rusty Ford truck, and I was like, "Really?" Because that's the first thing I ask anybody that's younger than me. What's the oldest thing they've ever ridden in? And she's like, "Yeah, it was like a 1990 something." I was already out of high school and everything else, and that's the oldest thing you've ever ridden in. So that's
Hmm.
one of my favorite things about it is taking people for a ride and letting them hear the
Hmm.
horn and everything else. So
That's fun. That's good. Yes, I hope those wheels stand up for you. At least you
I
got
think they
lots of
will.
spares. That's good.
I think,
Yeah,
yeah.
good. So what else is there to do on the
Um,
car?
Really just the finishing the planning the route. And the guys from San Diego that were in Las Vegas a few weeks ago said they would help me out planning it. Um, they drove theirs from San Diego to Las Vegas, and they said some of the route that I had already planned and told them about probably wasn't the best route to take. So
Hmm.
I was like, just get me from Dallas to San Diego, however it takes, whatever you suggest. Y'all are familiar with these areas a lot more than I am, and
Hmm.
so we'll see what happens.
Do you need special preparations for the deserts or the mountains?
Well, I had a lot of people also say November was the wrong month to do it in, but it worked out great for me. With the restaurant, we're actually leaving a couple of days before Thanksgiving, so that's a slower week for us at the restaurant. And
Right.
we have 2 other children still in school, and so they'll be in school one week and out the following week. So that also was a consideration. So
Hmm.
that's our biggest thing, is
Yeah.
just making arrangements for everything to still flow smoothly.
I wouldn't know where to begin to plan a trip like that, let alone on a tight timeline. So we'll all be following closely, that's for sure. who's in charge of your social media while you're traveling?
Yeah, everyone will be doing some videos for me. If my wife or whoever's riding with me, and I say video this and send it to me, they'll take care of it. But I, I I'm really big on social media. I think it's a remarkable tool to use to get people's attention, whether it's for this or for the restaurant or any other calls or business or anything. It's a wonderful tool that we have at our disposal.
Well, and let me know if I can help in any way with Flivver Channel.
Of course, people are welcome to follow me on Facebook or Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube.
Yes, I'll make sure I include all those links in the description and also on my social media channels so that people have lots of ways of following you and staying in touch as you prepare for the journey and as you strike out on the journey. I want to thank Todd for speaking to me today. You can bet that Flivver Channel will be following his preparations and his journey very closely, and we will do everything we can to help promote this fundraiser. It's for an important cause and it's a compelling story. If listeners would like to contribute, I will put links in the description and in our social media feeds. Todd, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm sure we'll talk again before your departure.
I'm looking forward to it.